pleasant nights, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I'm known on this level of the tower as Jaime in Fuego, and if you please, you join me here for a bit of palaver on Hail to Stephen King. That's right, making a triumphant return here on Enfuegotainment. This is a program that I did over 330 episodes of on the horror show, and, when I went back to Arizona State, it's been kind of, just sporadic here on Enfuegotainment in comparison as opposed to a more consistent schedule. But guys, when there is a new big King release that is happening, I'm going to be covering it regardless, and that just took place this past weekend, as on July 13th, MGM Plus. You ever heard of that streamer? Maybe not, but it is one of the newer, peeps on the block, so to speak. And yes, owned by Amazon, so you got all that Bezo dinero. But yeah, guys, MGM Plus, the streamer, debuted the first 2 episodes of the 8-episode series based on The Institute, the novel by Stephen King that was released in September of 2019, if I believe, September 10th, 2019. And so this was a book when I initially reviewed it upon publication for Hail to Stephen King, back when the program was still on the horror show. I was a little lukewarm on it, as unfortunately I've been relatively lukewarm on a number of things that King has done in the last X number of years, because, like, for every, this is me reaching a little bit further back, but for every Doohickey, or a little bit later Revival, or the Mr. Mercedes trilogy, Sans End of Watch, where it lost some steam, or even, a more recent collection, like You Like It Darker, there is things like The Institute or, Fairy Tale. Things where King is definitely just branching out and attempting to, kind of alter the norm. Shift away from the hard-boiled crime drama, doing something besides a Holly book. But, yeah, man, The Institute was one of those where I was just like, it's okay, but I can definitely see where King is almost deriving inspiration from newer things that derived inspiration from his older things. Stranger Things, obviously, was the immediate connotation that a lot of people were making when King announced that, yeah, he was writing a book about gifted kids in a secret government facility taken against their will. And, yeah, so, I'm not going to go as far as to say that it was a bad book, but it was, in a lot of ways for me, despite some interesting writing, like the character of Tim Jameson, who is the kind of disgraced police officer, who's trying to, find new work and ends up trying to help out these kids once he, eventually gets wind of things without them. But I'm not going to go super spoilery about this. This is just really about the first 2 episodes of the series. But, and I also had a very deliberate decision not to revisit the book. I downloaded it back onto my Audible, I had broke out the hardcover, and I was perusing through a little bit of it, this weekend, us at the horror show, we're covering the Mad Monster Horror Convention in Arizona. Some real good friends of ours, we've been doing that for over a decade, but that was when the episode dropped, was this weekend, and so as I was driving to and from the convention, where it was taking place about 40 minutes from my home here in the deadly desert of Arizona, but I was listening to a little bit of the beginning of the book where you learn about this night knocker position, which I had never even heard about such a thing until, King was writing about it and gave some history about how, yeah, like, a lot of places, like back east, for instance, they still have these positions in these very, very small towns with, like, just meager to, like, next to nil law enforcement presence because, they don't have it in the budget. They can't afford to have, like, a huge police force or anything. And so there are these, like, graveyard shift sort of law affiliates, that work for the police department, but they're not technically officers, and they go around, check on local businesses, do little chalk marks that, just show that somebody has been there, although oddly enough, when they make their way back around, they scratch it off. Anyway, long story short, the character of Tim, as this law enforcement guy, is only one half of the duo that we have in this, because I believe Luke is his name, if I remember correctly. Yeah, Luke Ellis is the other kid who is our mainstay gifted kid who gets taken by said government organization, and we see everything on the inside through his eyes and the other kids that he interacts with, and then Tim is on the outside, and eventually they end up crossing paths. And I didn't really remember a ton about the book beyond that, especially with regards to the minor characters. There is a much younger kid who arrives in the facility who is, like, crazy powerful and is very instrumental in some of the things that happens later on in the book, but a lot of the nuances, for instance, in, like, the middle of this book, I didn't really remember, and I was like, go in with fresh eyes. You know, don't go in with any expectations, you know, too high, too low, one way or the other. All that I really recalled was the general setup of the story. I do recall how it ends. I do recall the conceits of what these kids are being used for, and how what I was hoping they were going to be used for. All I will say is breakers, and anybody who's a tower junkie will know what I mean. Anybody who isn't familiar, they're not going to have any clue, and so I'm not spoiling anything. But I will say it wasn't that, and I was very disappointed in that not being the case in the source material. But who the hell knows? I mean, sometimes these things can be altered for television. I know for television and film purposes, a lot of the time they will inject more Stephen King Easter eggs than you would typically expect or need, or, you know, would, you know, it's just that little, like, nod and wink sort of situation that I always appreciate when it comes to the King adaptations. But, yeah, man, but so MGM Plus, it's a little bit pricier than I would imagine a lot of people would have wanted to pay for only one show. I believe From is another show that is on this particular network. It used to have a different streaming name, and then it was rebranded under the MGM label because, you know, Metro Goldman, or Goldwyn, I don't know, the Roaring Lion at the very beginning, guys, you know, that was one of the most synonymous images at the beginning of films, going all the way back to, you know, like the classic period of Hollywood and everything. And so, I mean, shit, dude, you start the Wizard of Oz on the third lion's roar with Darkseid, and boy, will you have a hell of a psychedelicized time. But yeah, I mean, so just the image of the lion in general is very smart on the part of Amazon, in my estimation, of just, it's a recognizable image and almost just immediately denotes, like, something being a little more sophisticated, a little more legit, I guess, is a much more grounded way of putting it. And so, as I said, they have money behind it, but strangely enough, if I'm just going to give some overall impressions of the first 2 episodes of this show, it doesn't look like they spent a lot of money on it. This feels in a lot of ways like some of those 90s and even like early 2000s sort of King television adaptations, which were all on the thoroughly mediocre to even like a little lesser than. You know, there are a lot of television series now, especially when you're looking at the HBOs and even like, you know, FX and some of the other premium networks, you know, Showtime or whatever, and some of the other streamers. Like even Netflix will throw some money at stuff from time to time, although they also cheap out on a lot of stuff as well, you know, occasionally or often, depending on the property. But, I mean, there are times where you see the budget being thrown at television now where it looks film quality. This is not. This feels cheaper. It feels like television. And I think in some ways one of the big reasons for that may be because of the people developing it, and so then the affiliates and everything. So, I mean, the 2 big names behind this, originally it was going to be David E. Kelley, who has done so much prestige television over the years, and who also developed the Mr. Mercedes television series that started out on the AT&T Audience Network, and then I believe it was rebranded under, maybe it's on Peacock now. It ended up getting sucked up into one of the other, you know, streamer studio affiliate situations. But Mr. Mercedes was exceptional. David E. Kelley did a great job developing it. Jack Bender was a director of a number of episodes in all 3 seasons of that show. Brendan Gleeson, Harry Treadaway, Mary Louise Parker, who was also in this show. I mean, that was kick-ass, exceptional television. All 3 seasons. And I liked how they altered the order of the Bill Hodges trilogy of books, how they put Finders Keepers in the 3rd slot as opposed to in the 2nd slot. So they wrapped up, you know, Brady's story in the first 2 seasons and then went into what was sandwiched between in the way King had initially written it. And I love all 3 seasons of that show. It's terrific. And Jack Bender directed a lot of episodes of that. I mean, he goes all the way back to, like, directing the 3rd Child's Play, for instance, before Mancini really took the reins and, you know, started doing a lot more himself behind the camera as opposed to just writing. But, you know, the thing is, though, he also did a lot of episodes of Under the Dome. And Under the Dome, despite starting fairly strong and having some decent actors in it, that show went off the frickin' rails as they got to the 2nd and then 3rd season and were deviating more and more from the source material. Not that it was poorly directed, but it just was not good television, and especially when you're working with source material in something like Under the Dome that, in my, you know, personal opinion, as far as art being subjected and everything, was not particularly good, you're not really set up that great. And unfortunately with the Institute, you're not set up very great because I didn't think that the book was that good to begin with. And so, I don't know, sometimes you can elevate the source material, sometimes you can't, but I guess the point that I'm meandering around with this is, so Jack Bender being back to direct, who did Mr. Mercedes, terrific, but David E. Kelley, after optioning it when the book was first coming out in 19, ended up leaving, and was replaced by developer and writer Benjamin Cavell. And so Benjamin Cavell did like 27 episodes of Justified with Timothy Olyphant as a writer, and then he apparently created and was behind writing 114 episodes of something called SEAL Team that I have never heard of. Apparently Angel was in it, David Boreanaz. So I don't know, it was popular enough to last that long. I think it was a CBS show, and CBS loves those military and procedural, you know, law enforcement sort of shows. It's not my cup of tea. I will take the higher road in this particular situation, guys. But, so yeah, you replace someone like David E. Kelley behind so much great television with somebody without a very impressive, very lengthy track record, and this is where I guess I can indicate a lot more about how the Institute is started. Benjamin Cavell also developed with Josh Boone the latest version of The Stand. Yeah, so I guess, and that had a ton of great talented faces behind it as well. You know, CBS All Access, now called Paramount Plus. But that show fell on its face. It deliberately decided to alter the order and do something new, and I'm all for trying to do something new when it comes to not just adapting King, but really anything that has been priorly done. You know, put your own stamp on it, try to, you know, it's like with a cover song, for instance. It's like, if you're just going to play the same damn song that the original artist did, what is the point of even doing it if you're not going to, I mean, do like what System of a Down did with Snowblind. I'm thinking of the recent Black Sabbath and Ozzy Back to the Beginning show, because that was a very, very emotional moment for me. But yeah, if you're going to do a cover, man, switch it up. Do something drastically different. Put your own stylistic stamp on it. And so I understand perhaps the motivation behind some of the alterations in The Stand, this new version of it, you know, that had Skarsgård and had, you know, Odessa Young and had some really talented piece behind it, James Marsden, but, you know, it fell on its face in my opinion. It was not good, and Benjamin Cavell was behind that. So you're like, yeah, Jack Bender's back. He did such a great job on Mr. Mercedes. He's been directing from and doing a great job with that too from a directorial standpoint. That's a very popular show. But the Institute is not starting off particularly strong, and it's not really because of poor acting in my estimation. You know, you don't have big names in this, but you do have some familiar faces. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, Mary Louise Parker is in this. She plays Miss Sigsbee, I want to say. So she's like the head director of the Institute itself, but of course she has higher like government secret organizational people that she is answering to, and there's a phone call in, I believe, the second episode of this, where you've got the guy, like, you know, hiding behind the chair, and he's out of focus, and you see pieces on his table, like, you know, like cowboys on horses and weird things like that, but he's shrouded in secrecy. And you know, I was watching this with Lady Catherine, and she was just like, man, I thought that guy would be like stroking a cat and laughing or something. It was so just stereotypical villain in that regard. But yeah, man, so Mary Elizabeth Parker, I keep saying Mary Louise Parker, she's alright in it, you know. She really, unfortunately, peaked in a lot of ways with Weeds, and it was such an iconic role for her, and, you know, the you know, pot-dealing suburban mom, and it was the benchmark of her career, and she did a couple things like, you know, the movie, the Red 1 and 2, around that time with Bruce Willis, and I mean, there was a great cast in that. I'm trying to remember, maybe Malkovich was in that, or Anthony Hopkins. It's been a number of years since I've watched it, but, you know, that was in, like, the early aughts when she was really peaking with her career, and she was great on that show, you know, and she was awesome as Hodge's love interest in Mr. Mercedes Season 1 and stuff. Holly's cousin, if I remember correctly. But, she's not bad in this. Since I haven't revisited the book, I'm not, like, 100% about, if some of the odd quirks that her character has in one particular scene where she's back at her home in just off-site of the Institute. So, you know, the main workers there, they have their little areas where they go to, you know, sleep and eat and whatever when they're not actually on the job proper. She has some weird quirks, man. I can't remember if that is in the source material or not, because I haven't revisited it. But, so yeah, interesting choices if that was something that was new to this adaptation. But so yeah, she's in it, and then you know, Ben Barnes, who plays Tim Jameson, he has some nice warmth to him. He's a British actor who also does like some music and stuff. But I haven't seen him in any of the projects that he's been a part of. I mean, so he was Prince Caspian in the more recent Narnia stuff. You know, we've got Greta Gerwig is about to do an adaptation herself right now, but. Yeah, and then he was in, Westworld for a few years. I know that was a very celebrated show. I never watched it, unfortunately. I've seen the Crichton original film from the 70s, but I never watched the adaptation. I know a lot of people loved it, but it was, you know, when I had the time to get around to watching it, it had already been pulled from Max, so I was like, oh shit, okay, whatever. You know, he was Jigsaw and Punisher, and then most recently he had a couple seasons on a show called Shadow and Bone that got canceled relatively quickly on Netflix. But, you know, he brings some nice warmth to the character of Tim. Good interaction with, like, the local kind of homeless weirdo woman who he kind of strikes up a friendship with. So, you know, and then he also has kind of a pseudo-potential love interest. Now, once again, I don't remember the book particularly well, so I don't know if these are new subplots or anything that could have been... I do remember kind of the crazy woman of the town. That they also changed the setting for this. I do remember that it's like in Florida, where King spends the rest of his time, as opposed to, yeah, they go the stereotypical route of this being in Maine. You know, they always, even when King sets stuff elsewhere, they often want to bring it back to Maine, because that's the comfort zone for a lot of King viewers or whatever. You know, get those accents. But yeah, man, so, you know, Ben Barnes is good in the role of Tim, and also the newcomer who's playing Luke, who is our main kid. He's solid in this as well. Let's get his name, Joe Freeman, because I believe in the opening credits it does say introducing Joe Freeman. So, you know, that's all well and good. And then I also have to give a major shout out. One of my favorite character actors, dude, because he has been in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things. Dude by the name of Julian Richings, a British-Canadian actor, if I'm not mistaken. He plays kind of the more villainous of the villains at the Institute, where these kids are taken against their will and studied to see, you know, what sort of powers they have. Now, since in the first 2 episodes they haven't revealed what the purpose of the studies with these kids are, determining if they're TK or TP, you know, telekinesis or, you know, telepathic. And then also rating the extent of their powers, rating if it's negative or positive, if I remember correctly. So negative being if they have more of a control over it, positive being if they can, or excuse me, less of a control over it, positive being if they can will it and actually deliberately do it. And so, yeah, the kid's being injected with drugs and everything, and, you know, the character of Luke does bring a feistiness, you know, that I can appreciate. I think they did go a little bit older with the kids, not just in the casting, but with how old they're supposed to be, because they're like high school students in this. Although they said Tim is, Luke is supposed to be what, like 14, I think, in this. Kid doesn't look 14, but, you know, whatever. But yeah, he plays kind of the on the spectrum genius kid relatively well, but with a little bit of an edge to him. But, you know, back to Julian Richings before I forget, man, this dude has done so much. He will always be Death from Supernatural to me. But, I mean, I had forgotten that he was on Chapelwaite, which was the great adaptation of the Jerusalem's Lot bit, the Salem's Lot prequel, which was really, really awesome. But, I mean, listen to the rest of this. I'm not going to show photos for all of it, but he was on the 12 Monkeys TV series. He made an appearance on Doom Patrol, Umbrella Academy, Channel Zero, American Gods, Orphan Black, Forever Night, way back in the 90s, if you guys have ever seen that Vampire Detective show, which is so awesome and unfortunately forgotten. And then he had also done some King stuff previously. He had a small role in Bag of Bones, and then he was on all of Kingdom Hospital, which was the repurposing of the Kingdom, which the Lars von Trier thing that Stephen King did in the aughts. And so, yeah, man, I mean, Richings is just awesome. And then, yeah, I mean, anything for Jackson, a film that he did more recently, might be something that people will just kind of point to and remember and realize and everything. He also got, he was at the beginning of Cube. The beginning of the original Cube. Anyway, so just seeing his presence in there, you know, kind of warms my heart. But as you can tell, there's not a lot of heavy hitters, not a lot of big names like we had with The Stand, because this is a King property that's not been adapted previously. And just back to it, it's not bad. Performances are decent enough. I mean, the rest of the kids that Luke is interacting with, like there's the tougher, more macho one, and then, you know, there's the girl who is like overly flirtatious, and you're trying to figure out like why she's kissing, you know, Luke when she first meets him. And, you know, I definitely will champion the fact that we have a nice mix of like ethnicities and just kind of vibes amongst all of these kids, which is cool, because I remember correctly, it was all pretty vanilla in King's story, you know. But yeah, just the acting from these kids, once again, it's not bad, but the strongest that we are seeing, it's from Richings, even though he's kind of one-note, villain. Mary Louise Parker, as we're kind of trying to figure out how much sympathy does she have for these kids. There's another orderly dude who's like injecting the drugs into the kids, who's just a bit ridiculous, and he's like actually inflicting physical harm on Luke, and then the other tougher, more macho, rebel without a cause kind of kid, Nicky, if I remember, maybe that's his name. Anyway, but yeah, the super powerful younger kid that arrives on the scene that is very instrumental in where things go with the story. He shows up at the end, he's the runt, he's the baby of the bunch, but he also ends up becoming the most powerful, so I'm not going to spoil anything of that regard. So I just keep thinking back to the fact that this is very much like Stranger Things, but without the endearing 80s nostalgia vibe, and unfortunately, without the strength of the like that ensemble of kids, they were a lot younger than these kids are in this, and yet their acting was better. I don't know, it's just, and maybe I'm just nitpicking in that particular regard, because Stranger Things very much was lightning in a bottle in a lot of ways. There's no denying that. I'm super stoked to see how the show finally wraps everything up, but, I still even thought when King did The Institute in the first place, it was reactionary writing. It was him being like, oh, well, Stranger Things was influenced by me and Spielberg. Well, I'll show these kids how it's done. And it just wasn't that interesting. And so while this show is not terrible, it's not like on the Stand levels of blasphemy or anything, and it hasn't gone over the rails like Under the Dome did, which, just all the creative ties of these people that are involved in it from like the directorial and the writing standpoint and stuff. Aside from the fact that Bender has done his fair share of really great stuff, this was pretty lackluster. Not that I even went in with like big expectations, having not been like the biggest fan of the book, but I was hopeful because Bender's involvement, and I didn't find out until doing this review and some research that David E. Kelley had left the project and they replaced him with Benjamin Cavell to develop and to write. So, and that's where I think a lot of this is pretty lackluster. The writing is not very good. I mean, when you don't have the best writer working from source material that was a little lackluster to begin with, I mean, it's going to go one of two ways, It's going to really show the shortcomings of the original writing, in my estimation, or if you have somebody really adept, they're going to be able to elevate it. This is not elevated, at least not yet. And also the fact that the production values just seem it's such a small cast of people, especially when you're at the Institute itself. There's like 5 or 6 kids there. There's like 3 orderlies, there's Sigsbee, and then, the 2 other guys, Stackhouse, and then there's 1 other doctor, the 2 orderlies, one who was like the good cop, the older woman, and then you've got, the asshole guy who's like inflicting harm on the kids. But it's a pretty streamlined cast, and also the sets just feel just schmaltzy and small, and I don't know, I know they filmed it up in, I think, like Nova Scotia or something, so they filmed it in Canada, probably on the cheap to get all the, all the tax cuts and everything, but the show just doesn't feel as big as some of the ideas that even King in the narrative starts to explore as the secret is revealed about what these kids are being used for. And unfortunately, when I was watching with Catherine, she called out some things that haven't even been really hinted at in the first 2 episodes. Unless they changed some stuff up, she had already solved some of the mysteries about, what these kids are being used for and so on and so forth, the difference between front house and back house for those who have watched it. So, I don't know, there's 6 more episodes. This is going to be running until August 24th, which is when we will see the 8th and final episode, the finale. I know Jack Bender has been confirmed to have directed 4 of the 8 episodes. There's another director that has done 2 more. I don't know if they bring Bender back for like the final 2 or something like that, but as I was perusing the IMDb and then also the Wikipedia, that was the clarification about the extent of his involvement, I guess. So, I mean, not off to a terrible start, but definitely not an improvement on what I already thought was kind of so-so later King source material. So, anyway, guys, it's my thoughts on the first 2 episodes of The Institute. I will say that I'm very glad that during Prime Day I signed up for 2 months of MGM Plus for 99 cents a month. So watching these 8 episodes is only gonna have cost me, around $2 hairs. $2. So yeah, that's at least a relief, but I'm debating if I want to do an episode by episode, so do like almost an after show for episode 3, after show for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on, or if I should just wait until the 8th and final episode and just go from there. Let me know in the comments below if you have actually made it this far into the video. Do you think I should do an episode by episode, or is that going to be a waste of my time and like a waste of time, waste of breath, because nobody has MGM Plus and nobody's even really going to be taking in this show to begin with. It didn't really have the best buzz after it premiered its first episode at South by Southwest last month, but I was trying to come in with an open mind, remain hopeful, and also not revisit the source material. After the show is done, I'm definitely going to reread the book just out of personal curiosity to see how much has been altered, omitted, whatever. So yeah, guys, that is my thoughts on the first 2 episodes of The Institute that is streaming now on MGM Plus. I know with Amazon Prime you can still do a 7-day trial, so maybe if you are inclined to binge it, wait until the end of August, sign up for that week, just binge all 8 episodes, take that route. But I do want to I was saving this for the end of the episode, but this is a little unboxing from a friend of mine named Dirk Heron, who was very kind enough to drop this on me when I saw him during the Mad Monster Horror Convention. And so this is apparently something that he did some giveaways that Neon was behind. Wow, I should have really chopped this up a little bit better. There we go. So Neon had some promotional packages that they were putting out for one of my favorite films of the year, Mike Flanagan's Life of Chuck. And so he ended up through some interesting means being able to obtain 2 of these swag boxes. And man, guys, it's not available on streaming or like digital VOD, at least not as of this filming, if I'm not mistaken. But you got to check out The Life of Chuck. Mike Flanagan. It's not horror Stephen King, but it is heartfelt Stephen King, as great and grand as it gets. I love that movie. But let's see what we have in here. So, okay, so we've got this little book thing. I'm not sure what this... Oh, wow. This is very cool. Holy moly. I don't know if I can actually get this to show properly, but so it looks like it is, you're not going to be able to see that. It's almost like it's one of those books where you spin through it and then it's like showing the dance scene, the iconic dance scene from the middle of the book. One of those little, like, if you skip through it super quickly. That's pretty badass. Very cool. Next up we have the Cosmic Calendar, Life of Chuck. Let's check out what. Okay, so it is literally just a calendar. What year is it? It's got to be for this year, obviously, right? No. This is 26, so this is for next year. So I can actually use this next year if I need something beyond what's in my phone. Is this one for 25, or is it just a duplicate? No, once again, yeah, this is also 26. So hey, double down on the Cosmic Calendar. Very, very sweet. Let's see what else we got chillaxing in here. Oh, we got a hat. I'm not really the hat type particularly, but this is pretty dope. In memoriam. There you go. Thanks, Chuck. Awesome. Charles Krantz, man. 39 great years? 37? Shit, I'm trying to remember now. I'm losing all my credibility. What else do we have? Might be a poster, perhaps. That would be pretty swirt. Once again, guys, the short story, the novella, Life of Chuck, that was housed in If It Bleeds, when that came out in 2020, the beginning of that story just chilled me to the bone, part 3, because it starts with part 3 and has a very interesting sort of assembly to it of working in reverse almost. So definitely a poster. That's tedious process, guys. We're losing ratings, obviously. Boy, this is a very strange way of wrapping up this poster, I gotta say. So this is gonna be, which poster will it be is what I wonder. Okay, oh wow, it's a ginormo poster too. Wowza. Well, there's only so much I can do, but wow, very cool. Oh wow, a signed poster? Is this signed by Hiddleston? Holy moly! Signed by a bunch of members of the cast, it looks like. I wonder if Flanny's on here too. Shiza. Okay, well, I'm gonna be very ginger with this poster now because I did not realize there was all that jazz going on with it, but this is like one of the full, like, theater posters, and apparently it appears that it was signed by everybody, so that is amazing, actually. Holy moly. Dirk, thank you, man. Wowza. Alright. And then last but not least, it appears that we have, okay, so this was the shirt that when I saw Dirk at Mad Monster, him and his wife on Friday at the Mad Monster Horror Convention in Arizona, he was rocking this shirt. Okay. So you've got, there we go. Thanks, Chuck. Yep, 39 great years. Okay, so my first guesstimation, 39 great years. I think that was what I said. That's pretty sweet. And then the image that people are seeing on their TVs and like all over during the first act of the film. There you go. You get Hiddleston's handsome muggy there. So, wow, that is, damn, Neon, you guys are rad status. I really wish you would have released this film last fall after it did so great at TIFF and won, what, the Audience Award, I think. Unfortunately, it did not do particularly well in theaters, and I'm fearful that by the time awards season actually hits and some of the noms are coming out like early next year from the things from 2025, I am fearful that Life of Chuck is going to get lost in the shuffle, man. But yeah, I'm not the hat type, and I will put that on real quick. You know, rock it right there. So yeah, guys, that is pretty rad status from from Neon, who are the distributors of The Life of Chuck. Once it actually hits home release and you can rent it, buy it, whatever, I'll obviously be obtaining the physical media of it, but it's a terrific movie, man, and I'm just so very stoked to have, you know, Dirk been so kind and gracious to throw this my way, and also to Neon, obviously, for being super rad status and even putting this amazing package together. It was such a special film, and I just really, no, it's not a film for everybody, because I heard some people say, oh, it's too sappy, it's too, you know, whatever, but, yeah, man, I thought it was terrific, yeah, and just absolutely warmed my heart, got very existential, ruminating about just my own place in existence, and, you know, yeah, I am special and all that. So anyway, it's a fantastic film, and so thanks to Dirk, my buddy Dirk Heron, and thanks very much to Neon for even supplying these to those who were big fans of the film or just will hopefully discover it in the near future. So I extend a grande gracias, everybody. I have been Jaime Fuego. You can find me on all social media sectors like Twitter or X or whatever, Instagram, Facebook, obviously here on YouTube. Give a like, you know, subscribe, all that different stuff. Greatly appreciated. I do primarily just short little out of the theater stuff on this channel at the moment. In the fall, I am in the midst of planning like a full-on relaunch, and I'm still debating if it's going to be like more of a podcast component, more a video component, maybe a dual bit of both, whatever. I just renewed some domains and some other things, but yeah, and then I'm also, I'm on the TikyTokies a little bit. I essentially just cast the net, you know, Threads, Blue Sky, I'm on all of that shizzle, but it is primarily just some musings about the entertainment industry. You know, I just went back to school and studied, you know, film and media studies. That's what I got a Bachelor of Arts in, and so getting set for the master's program here in the fall. But yeah, it's been a great process and everything. But once again, thanks to Dirk, thanks to Neon, thanks to Chuck, obviously, and thanks to all of you. So until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, sin amigos, constant readers and viewers alike, say thank you. I hope that we have been well met and that we share more of this palaver sooner rather than later. Do you want weekly installments of the Institute? We'll keep rocking that. There's a lot of cool King stuff coming in the next few months between the Long Walk in September. You've got Welcome to Derry in October. You've got The Running Man in November. In August, we have The End of the World as We Know It, which is the Stand anthology that King didn't write anything for, but he has a foreword, and it's all these great writers playing in his sandbox of the world of the Stand, so to speak. So this is one of the biggest years for the King since 2017, since, I mean, 1983 was another one of those years where there was just so many movies and books and all kinds of stuff coming out. I wasn't a big fan and never flinched, but whatever, that's another King thing that you have if you're inclined this year. There's still his, his Maurice Sendak version of Hansel and Gretel, which I believe is coming in September too. So man, what a year for El Rey. His son still has, I just saw Abraham's Boys in theaters. His son also has The Black Phone 2, being Joe Hill, obviously. And then Joe Hill's King Sorrow is coming in October. So man, what a hell of a year for some horror royalty. I'm so very stoked to be a part of it and covering it for all of you. So, once again, that danke, arigato, gracias, merci, thank you so very much, everyone. Say thank you. And until next time, hey, I always finish it with the horror show vibe, even though the program isn't really on there except for an occasion. But yeah, stay scared, read Stephen King. If you have not read The Institute, it's not a super big recommend from me, but hey, art is subjective, and if you want to see Sai King trying to out Stranger Things, I mean, hey, give The Institute a shot, but I would say read Life of Chuck. That's just me, though.